Episode 3 of Only Murders in the Building is here, and I'd say this is the episode that gave us the least amount of clues on who the killer could be when compared to the previous 2 episodes. Titled 2 for the Road, we saw each character with their acting counterpart for their biopic as they looked to delve deeper into the case of who killed Sazz and why they could potentially be after Charles. With an important revelation during the ending and some hidden clues sprinkled throughout the episode, let's jump into the video and break down all that there was to take away from it. Here is Only Murders in the Building Season 4 Episode 3 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Charles and Eugene Levy's investigation. Charles and Eugene Levy have a strong connection as characters in the show, and their similarities are what make them so humorous together. During this episode, we saw that they went to Vince's apartment to get to the bottom of why it was that he was wearing an eye patch. They believed that he may have been lying about his conjunctivitis and that he may have in fact had a bruised eye because of the recoil of the weapon being fired when Sazz was murdered. After devising a plan of getting Vince to put eye drops in, it failed, and they had to resort to a plan B, which was for somebody to spit water in Vince's face and for him to then reveal his eye. Something that did happen, and it did confirm that he in fact had conjunctivitis and not a bruise. However, even though that was the case, there were 2 main revelations that occurred during the encounter. The first was that we saw that Vince has violent tendencies within him. In my opinion, if somebody spat water in your face in such a casual way like what occurred in this meeting, I don't think it would warrant a punch in the face. I thought that was quite extreme of the character, and I feel it was included to show that he had a violent side within him, which does make him suspicious. Plus, we also heard more about how Vince watches Charles' apartment a lot. Something that we didn't hear from as much with Rudy in this episode, nor the family in the previous one. However, the main thing to take away from the investigation around his apartment was the photo of the residents on floor 14, with one of the residents having their face scribbled over and the pet pig, Tammy Faye Baker, being in it too. A clear nod to the evangelist, Tammy Faye Baker, something which is most definitely a clue. This begs the question on if the person with the face scribbled out was the individual that was on the radio frequency at the end wanting Mabel to get off of it and to not ask who Dudenoff was, because the last person that did was killed. They certainly recognized the pig because they called out to it, so one would have to assume that this person once lived there. We only know of a few residents on floor 14. We've been inside 3 apartments so far, but we've seen Mabel walk past so many more. So maybe this person on the radio lived there once and ended up moving out, something which hurt Vince. Or maybe she is Dudenoff, and that's why she's using the radio, because she doesn't want to be traced as easily. I guess we'll find out more about her identity in the next episode of the show, and maybe some other neighbors being interviewed as well. I feel like that will have to happen at some point. Mabel and Ava's investigation. This episode did one main thing for me, and it kind of made me suspicious about Ava. There was a large focus on her going rogue in the episode and her being extremely keen to solve the murder, whilst also showing us that she knew her way around a gun, even if it wasn't real, and that she was also prepared to take matters into her own hands. She loved the idea of being able to solve a murder, more so than the others, so there could well be a theory out there where she could have been the killer in some capacity. Could that well be the reason as to why she wanted it to be solved so quickly as well, to take her name out of the firing line and to pin it on somebody else? There's been a lot of emphasis on Charles being a former actor in this season of the show, so could he have wronged somebody from his past that she knew or currently knows, and that's what drove her to want to kill him? It's just one theory for now, but to be honest, there's no wrong theories right now. Everything's to play for. Rudy, who's also known as Christmas All the Time Guy, was ruled out of the equation for now in this episode, even though Mabel believed that she found tinsel at his home. It turned out that he actually hated Christmas, but he was locked into a trap of having to live like it because his social media personality depended on it. Plus, the gun that he had on the wall wasn't real, which meant that he may not have known his way around a Winchester 300 Magnum, a rifle that would ordinarily be used to take out large game. The only thing that points in his direction is the fact that he'd probably be strong enough to move Sazz's body down to the incinerator, whereas nobody else on the 14th floor would be able to do so. Plus, he was apparently the only tenant that wasn't with Alfonso, Inez, Anna, and Vince playing cards on the night that Sazz was killed, so who's his alibi? When looking at who could potentially be the hunter out of the suspects so far, the main person that I would think of would be Alfonso. This is just mainly due to the knife that he owned when we saw him being prepared to carve up the ham that was in the bathroom in the previous episode. Plus, did you see the leg? It was huge. Could he have hunted it and cured it himself? During Mabel and Ava's investigation as well, we also found out that it wasn't tinsel that was found in Dudenoff's apartment. This was due to it not being flammable. Tinsel was highly flammable and was called Christmas's silent killer by him. When looking at what else this could be, the only thing that pops into my head is maybe some kind of tinfoil. Tinfoil isn't flammable, so that would make sense. Oliver and Zach's time together. This arc of the story was one which was separate to the main investigation, but was more centered around the plot of the movie that was taking place. Oliver was desperate for the biopic to be a success because he felt as though there was only one chance in life for a biopic to be made about somebody, and he wanted it to be the one that he always dreamed of having. With his relationship with Zach getting off to a bit of a rocky start, he took him to his apartment and pretty much showed him the ways of how to be Oliver. Something that he thought bonded the both of them, but in actual fact, Zach was just pretending. It was only at the end of the episode where Howard stuck up for Oliver, where we saw the real human side to the character, and we got a look under the facade that is Oliver Putnam. The individual that is actually missing the love of his life and is putting that on hold in the pursuit of the immortality that is being depicted on film. This was what ultimately changed Zach's opinion of Oliver, making him view him as King Lear rather than a jester. The main message of King Lear is that life is difficult and uncertain, and nobody can plan for all eventualities, showing that Oliver resembles that of the madman that wandered through the storm trying to find his place and divide up his kingdom within his own mind. The ending explained. This episode was all about seeing all of the characters going off with their counterparts from the Hollywood movie that was being made. You could almost call them their perfect strangers, the very show that kept getting mentioned throughout the entirety of this episode due to the theme song that was being played on the ham radio from time to time. I also feel like the term perfect strangers is like a nod to viewing somebody from the opposite side of the building. They're strangers, but you almost know many aspects of their life so perfectly well just by being able to observe them. So they're not distant strangers, they're more than that. With Mabel channeling her inner Mabel and going into Dudenoff's apartment, we saw that she checked out how long she could legally squat there for until she could become a tenant, hoping that it would get Dudenoff to return from Portugal so that her, along with Oliver and Charles, could begin to question them. One major revelation in this episode was that the shot that was fired did most certainly occur in Dudenoff's apartment due to the casing of the bullet being found alongside the window, and the window being one of the only ones that had been pried open. The main question that surrounds it, though, is was this person in Portugal when the killing took place, or did they commit the murder and then decide to flee? The final thing that we heard in the episode was the individual on the other end of the ham radio saying that Mabel needed to back off as the last person that started looking into Dudenoff ended up dead. This could well be alluding to Sazz's death, as she had a ton of evidence on her desk that implied that she was looking into what was going on with Dudenoff and all of the strange behavior on the 14th floor. One clue that I feel hasn't been looked into that much at the moment is the fact that the killer could well be a resident from within the East building, and that the shot could have been fired from the West as some kind of ruse. We know that the killer had access to the East building, and also Charles's apartment. Plus, we've seen that there's friction in the East building at the moment due to the fact that the residents there don't want their home turned into a movie set. So with the person hating Charles, and that being one major motive, I wonder if this whole "the killer is from the West" building is something that the show is just saying to lead us down a certain pathway, and maybe the killer is a bit closer to home. My review of the episode. I thought this was a good episode of the show. I don't think it was as strong as the first or second episode of the season, and I also don't think there were as many clues in this one. However, not every episode has to be drip-feeding us brand new information, and I think it's okay to sometimes just work with what we've got. The trio splitting up into duos made for an exciting aspect of the episode, and witnessing them all bonding in different ways and forming connections allowed that secondary part of the story to flourish and feel as though it could gain some legs. Seeing Mabel, Charles and Oliver all together at the end was like a reward of some kind. Their chemistry is electric when they're together, so having most of the episode where they weren't as one was something that was definitely missed, but there was a payoff at the end. Martin Short never fails to make me laugh in this show. The witty one-liners that he comes out with, even the performance comedy, and the way that his body is so animated from time to time is like nothing else, and it honestly has me in stitches. Only Murders in the Building was a show that I was really looking forward to returning, because not only is it a show that delves deep into your mind and wants to provide a thought-provoking experience, but at its core, it just wants to make you laugh and allow you to have a good time whilst enjoying the ride. And every Tuesday, I know for certain that both of those boxes are going to be ticked thanks to the meticulously intelligent writing, the convincing character performances, and the pacing of the story, which allows me to enter the Arconia and then swiftly leave. So, there you have it. Only Murders in the Building Season 4, Episode 3, Ending Explained. If you want to see every episode of Season 4 of Only Murders in the Building broken down, then click on the card in the top corner. There's an entire playlist there where I'm breaking down the show every week. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. What did you think of this episode? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thanks for tuning into the video, and I'll see you in the next one.